Hey guys, welcome back to High Angle Hunter. My name's Clay, and today we're going to be digging into the first of our gear change series, and we're going to do probably the most mundane thing that you could think about. We're going to talk about socks. As profound as it doesn't feel right now, there are some little components and nuances in your socks that will dramatically affect your boots performance and your comfort over the duration of a long hunt, no matter where you go. So, primary things you're looking at right out of the gate on socks is, should I go synthetic or should I go with merino wool? If you're in a really airy shoe, something that can move moisture out without anything in between you and the outside world, a synthetic sock is a great solution. Or if you're going to be dealing with lots and lots of water, say buku creek crossings in warm weather, spring trout fishing or summer trout fishing where you're working the edge of a creek but you're not in waders, a synthetic sock is a great solution because it moves moisture quickly and it doesn't absorb very much. Synthetic socks are only going to absorb about 1 to 3% of their weight in moisture. Merino, on the other hand, serves an entirely different purpose. A good merino sock can absorb 33 or 34% of its weight in moisture, which is quite a bit of storage. Why that matters is that on a conventional mountaineering boot or a heavy trekking or backpacking boot, you've got a couple of layers that you need to move moisture through. You've got the internal Gore-Tex or a Gore-Tex clone bootie, and then most common, a leather upper. Moisture either has to work through the membrane and through the leather or up through the cuff of the boot to leave the whole system to try to dry your feet out. Your boots try to work to match the environment outside of them. So unless you have really great conditions where it's cool and dry on the outside and it's warm and humid in your boot where it'll really move moisture out quickly, you end up with a slow moisture evacuation process. And your feet end up producing more moisture than the boot can take out. The solution there is moisture storage, and that's where a merino wool sock comes in. If you're always struggling with sweaty, clammy feet when you take your boots off at the end of the day, start by going to a merino sock. If they're still clammy, go to an even thicker merino sock. It sounds counterintuitive, but the volume of the sock itself and the amount of wool that you have there directly correlates to how much moisture you can absorb. I've personally always dealt with sweaty feet. When I went to a mountaineering weight sock in a merino wool, at the end of the day, my boots are damp on the inside, my socks are damp, but my feet are dry. If I go into more of a mid-weight sock, I find myself having a damp boot, a damp sock, and a damp foot. That little tiny difference in thickness, I mean, we're talking less than a 1/16 of an inch, makes all the difference in the world. When your feet are dry, your feet are tough. That's the ultimate goal. Another little tidbit on socks that goes a long way is when you're fitting your boots. If you start your process wearing more of a mountaineering weight sock, you get more protection during the break-in process, and if you don't have someone who's working with you with specific measurements on your feet and addressing the shape of your foot and matching the boot to it, sometimes you end up with a boot that's a little bit too narrow and typically in the forefoot. What happens then is you end up stretching that boot. When you stretch the boot width-wise, some of that volume ends up coming back off of the toe of the boot. So over the course of a year, 18 months, or 2 years, that boot's been hot and cold and wet and dry, and it's been stretching throughout that time frame. All of a sudden, the boot feels short. If you start with a slightly thicker sock, and that does happen, if you can tell that that boot's just a little bit too narrow and you haven't been provided access to something that's more adequate for your foot, go to that thick sock and you're going to find that if that happens, if the boot starts feeling short, you can go down in sock volume and recoup the utility of that boot. You get to use it for the rest of its functional life. If, however, you did it in a thin sock, there's nowhere to retreat to, and then you're stuck with either boots that are too small or you have to buy a pair of boots before you normally would have. We get a lot of people that ask us about the value of socks for insulation. What we've found is that in most instances, going up in sock volume doesn't provide as much insulation as one would expect. One of the caveats that accompanies that is that a thick sock takes more volume out of your boot. It has enough to influence your shoe size by a half, and in some instances even a full size. So if you wear a size 10 and a lightweight sock for warm weather stuff, and then you go into this high volume mountaineering sock for the winter time, the boot can sometimes be too small. when we restrict the capillaries on the feet, all of a sudden feet get colder. So what you pick up in insulation, you lose in circulation, and it's a net effect of very little. So when you're buying your socks, think about moisture control. It's the biggest driver. And then try to pair new boots with new socks that really jive with the intended application. If you have questions, please feel free to post them down below. There's going to be a more in-depth article on the website at HighAngleHunter.com to dig into more of the nuances, more of the subtleties that'll hopefully make it easier for you to pick the right socks for your next hunt. You can also message us on Facebook Messenger or right from our website. If you have a really specific question, feel free to call us at 928-440-5244. We appreciate your time, and make sure to check out the next portion of the footwear link in the gear chain where we dig into boots, how to select them, how to fit them.